What is going on, guys? Gaston right here, and today we're gonna be talking about which lens should you get as your first prime lens and zoom lens. And this came up after my two latest video about the EOS R, 10 things I don't like about the EOS R, and 10 reasons why you should buy the EOS R. If you haven't seen those videos, you can check them over here. Go and check them out. So a lot of people have been asking me, which first lens should I buy for the system? And actually the answer is a little more complicated than I thought it was. So what I decided to do is I decided to put this video together. I'm gonna divide it in two segments. Segment number one is gonna be a budget-friendly option, and segment number two, it is going to be a premium option. So why don't we get started right after this intro? Alright guys, my name is Gaston. I do photography videos, gear reviews, and also behind the scenes. So if you like what you see in this channel, consider subscribing to the channel and hit that notification button to be notified every time a video goes live. Now, let's talk about the first option, which is the budget-friendly option. So here we have it. This is the 35mm f1.8 lens. So it is actually the smallest lens, but it's also the cheapest lens that you're gonna get for the RF system. So I'm gonna pop it right here in the camera. So this is what you should expect from this lens. It's very maneuverable. It looks actually really good in the camera, and it's very, very, very light. This lens weighs only 336 grams. Now, let's talk a little bit about this lens and some of the features that it has. So first of all, this lens is actually image stabilized, and that is actually great because the EOS R and the RP, they don't have embodied image stabilization. So now you can gain stabilization through the lens, and that is actually incredible for just $450. Now the next thing is its wide aperture f1.8. This is gonna let in plenty of light exposing the sensor, making this setup great for low light situations, either you're shooting video or you're shooting photos. The next thing about this lens is that it has a very good focusing system. It's called the STM system, which stands for Standard Step and Motor System. And just to tell you the difference between the two, because the other one is the USM, the STM standard motor system is actually using stepper motor. It's a little bit noisier than the USM, but it's not by any means a worse alternative. It's just a little bit louder. Now, audio is going to be a problem if you're planning to capture audio from an on-camera microphone. Now, if you're going to be recording with an external recorder or a lavalier, then you're not going to have a problem. So the focusing system is really fast and accurate. It really performs. Now, let me tell you a little bit about the features that you can find around the lens. So for that, we're going to go overhead. Now, some of the features that you're going to notice about this lens, actually they repeat in all the other lenses for the RF lineup. So they're all going to have this ring right here that can be configured to adjust aperture, ISO, whatever you want. You can do that from the menu in the camera. Actually, I have this one configured to change my ISO. Now the second ring is going to be the focusing ring, which is actually very smooth and it's a little bit rubberized right there. We have over here an autofocus and manual focus switch, and then right over here we have an image stabilization on and off to turn on and off the image stabilization. The filter thread of this lens, it is going to be about 52 millimeters, and the way to tell that is by looking inside the cap. Boom, 52 millimeters. So this one was the very first lens that I got when I got my EOS R, and let me tell you, the reasons why I got this lens was because it was cheap. So I didn't want to spend a lot of money with the lenses, and I'm like, let me just get this lens, you know. If it's bad, I mean, it's not too expensive. It's $450. Oh, back then it was actually $500. With such a wide aperture, very portable, very light, it makes a perfect lens for most situations, whether they are photography or videography. Now, next up on the list was that lens that you were seeing right there, and it's the 24-105mm f1.4. Now, this lens goes for $899. Now, let me tell you, this lens is actually a 24-70, but it's actually exactly the same. I don't own the 24-105. However, I did get to use that lens. I rented for a while. I really like the quality, but I decided to wait and go for the 24-70. Now, the difference about the 24-70 and the 24-105 is, number one, the price of the 24-105 is only $899. So it's pretty affordable for a lens with a constant aperture f4. Now, that lens is also image stabilized, and it features the USM technology for the motor. So it's actually a lot quieter when focusing the lens. The image quality is actually sharper all across the frame. So It is a 24-to-1.5, which is gonna give you basically everything. You're gonna shoot in the wider side of the spectrum, and then you're gonna actually go in the telephoto arena, the 1.5. So with one lens, you actually can handle pretty much everything you want. And when you need something that requires more light, you have the 35mm f1.8. So for under $1,500, you're getting a lot of gear for your money. 35mm f1.8, you're gonna get plenty of light through the lens, super light lens, and then you're gonna get the zoom lens 24-to-1.5 that you can actually use it for everything else. You know, you're gonna go from the wider side of the 24 and then getting into the telephoto realm of the 1.5. So you can go wrong with this option, especially for the price. Now, next up, let's talk about the premium option, and that is going to be composed by the 50mm f1.2. Now, this is my favorite prime lens of the entire RF lineup, and there are several reasons why. Now, let me tell you about the price of this lens. It goes for $2,100. This lens is not image stabilized. Now, remember, the 35 does embody image stabilization or IS image stabilization. This one doesn't, and for $2,100, you know, I would expect this lens to really have some sort of stabilization, but it doesn't. So when using this lens with the EOS R or RP, you're gonna have to be really careful. Now, the EOS R has electronic embodied image stabilization, which is kind of like what the GoPro does, you know, so it crops the image even more, especially if you shoot in 4K, you're gonna crop even further. So something to keep in mind. I've been shooting actually with this camera in 1080p, and actually the 1080p that you get out of this camera is probably the best 1080p that I've got from any of my cameras that I own. So I find myself shooting more and more in 1080p and really not caring about that crop in 4K. So what else is good about this lens? Well, first of all, f1.2. So you're gonna let in plenty of light through this lens, exposing that sensor. This is going to be a low light beast. It is a lens that is going to be great for videographer or photography because the 50mm lens is the lens that fits right in the middle of the range. So you're gonna be able to work with the lens first of all in much tighter situations, whereas if you decide to go with the 85, which is another lens that I like, it's a lens that doesn't let you work in confined environments. So the 50mm is very versatile. It is a little bit bigger than all the other 50mm out there, but again, the quality of this lens is incredible. Now, it features the USM technology, which it delivers a much wider focusing performance. It also has a 0.19 magnification, which it ensures that you get super sharp images all across the way. And the weight of the lens is about 996 grams. So it's not excessively heavy. It's not super light. It's not as light as the 35mm. I think the 50 f1.2 from the EF mount is actually lighter than this lens. I don't own it anymore, so I don't remember, but I think it was a little bit lighter than this lens. So this one is about 1 kilogram or 1,000 grams. So really great lens, and the way it looks in the camera, it doesn't make the camera look too bulky like the 85. So let me show you overhead. And once again, we have this configurable ring that again is set up in this case to control the ISO. Then we have a super smooth focusing ring, and again, rubberized texture. On this side, we have the autofocus and manual focus switch, and then we have a distance limiter. And again, we don't have image stabilization on the lens. This is actually it for this lens. There are no more switches, anything else that you can configure. Right after the 35mm f1.8, this is the second lens that gets used the most out of all the prime lenses. Several reasons why. Number one, I think that this lens is pretty compact, you know, in my opinion, when you compare it with the 85 that is actually humongous. But the quality out of this lens is one of the things that I actually can vouch for and cannot stop raving about this lens. Everything out of this lens looks completely cinematic, and I don't like to use the word cinematic because I think it's being misused, but I don't find any other adjective to express what I feel when I take an image from this camera, open it in Lightroom, and I'm like, wow, it looks like someone applied a filter or something. Everything looks so great out of the camera. So that is one of the features that sets this lens apart and makes my favorite pick when it comes to prime lenses. Next up, we're going to be talking about the 24 to 70mm f2.8, and this is one of my favorite zoom lenses of all. 24 to 70mm, very versatile focal range. You know, you are wide at the 24 and then your telephoto at the 70mm. I just wish that someone can actually make a 24-85. That will be incredible. f2.8, that will be incredible. But I don't know if that is even optically possible. However, 24-70mm f2.8, you're gonna let in plenty of light. So this is going to be a great lens for low light situations. And there is another version which is the 28-70. Which is an f2, but that lens costs $3,000. Now, this lens right here costs $2,300, and sometimes you can get it actually for less. So it's a lens that, you know, you are not gonna go wrong with this lens. Either you're a photographer or a videographer, this lens is going to be in your backpack at some point of your life. Now, one great feature about this lens, this one does feature in-body image stabilization, and that is another reason why this lens is so incredible. So in-body image stabilization is something that you're gonna need so far for the EOS R or the RP, because Canon hasn't released this cameras with IBIS. I mean, that's for another video. So you have that right there. So let me actually pop the lens in the camera and it's gonna go up and close. Like I mentioned before, we see a pattern here. Again, we have that configurable ring, we have the focusing ring that is super smooth, and then you have the focus ring right there. Now, you are gonna find the autofocus and manual focus switch and the on and off image stabilization. And on the other side, like I mentioned before, you're gonna have the zoom locking mechanism. Now, this lens weighs less than the 50mm. Remember, that one was about a kilogram, 1,000 grams. So this one is actually 950 grams. So it's a little bit lighter than the 50mm. And in my opinion, it's the best 24-70 that I had the pleasure to use. And I own the Sigma one, and I own the G Master, and I own the Tamron, which is 28-70, similar. But the quality out of this lens is just incredible. I can compare the quality of this zoom lens comparable to any of the prime lenses, and that is something that you're gonna find with the RF lineup of lenses. No matter which lens that you use, they are super sharp. And usually when you have zoom lenses and you have elements moving around, you know, you don't have the same level of sharpness. But with this lens, that is all changed, and that is one of the reasons that I'm actually so drawn to the EOS R system and RF system is the lenses. The lenses, the lenses, the lenses. Now, you can also adapt EF lenses here, but in my opinion, I used to shoot with Canon before. The quality out of the RF lens is actually outstanding, and that's one of the reasons why the lenses are what they cost. I mean, some genius optical design went through the re-engineering of all the lenses, and this lens is no exception. So guys, here you have it, my two recommendations, budget-friendly option. We have the 35 to f1.8, and then we have the 24 to 1.5 as a zoom lens f4. Now for the premium option, my recommendation is the 50mm f1.2 and the 24-70mm f2.8. Now with this, we're gonna finalize this video, guys, but before you go, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification button, give it a like if you like what you see today. And my next review probably is gonna be about the 70-200mm f2.8, which is another lens that I've been working with and extremely love it. Thank you for watching, and until the next video, take care.